Shem, before we get to Parashas Emor, very excited to speak about Parashas Emor with everybody. But before we get to that, I wanted to speak about the holiday, which is coming up this week. And then I wanted to share a beautiful thought from a book that Sam and Thera were generous enough to send to me, which I definitely want to recommend to people. So let me first mention about the upcoming holiday. So this week, on Thursday night, Baruch Hashem, we're going to have a double whammy. We have the holiday, and we're completing Tractate Menachos, Baruch Hashem. So we have a Siyum, and in addition to that, we have the holiday. What holiday is it? It's the holiday of Pesach Sheni. Not so celebrated today. Pesach Sheni is not one of the big ones. Excuse me, they don't give off from school for Pesach Sheni. Usually people don't throw big parties. They don't have meals on Pesach Sheni. Lincoln, you're joining us. I'll pause it if you can give us an update. Lincoln, are you going to give us an update? Hold on one second. Let me pause it so we're not recording. Okay, so the holiday I'm referring to is Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni, although it's not big as a holiday in the in the scheme of the calendar of Jewish holidays, but it is becoming bigger and bigger. And amongst the Hasidic world, it's a very, very big holiday. And let's first read about it. So it's this Thursday night is the holiday of Pesach Sheni. Now you're allowed to have your chametz in your home, but it's still a concept of eating matzah. So we're going to bring shmur matzah to the yeshiva on Thursday night to have a little bit of shmur matzah, and we could eat it with our pizza or with our hummus. Anyway, so what's the concept here? Let me just read the verses from the Torah, and then we'll just try and translate it into our modern language. So it says that Moshe spoke to the children of Israel. This was in the second year. It was in the second year. The Torah says the second year after they left Egypt. And the children of Israel brought the Korban Pesach like they brought it on the first year before they left Egypt. Now it's the second year, so they did it again. But then they brought that Korban Pesach. But verse 6, Vayhi Anashim, there were some men, Asher Ayu Tmeim Nefesh Adam. They were Tamei Nefesh. What's Tamei Nefesh? That they had touched a dead body. Which dead body? We can look at that in a second. Asher Ayu Tmeim Nefesh Adam. Lo Yachlu Asot HaPesach V'Yamahu. They couldn't bring the Korban Pesach on that day. So what happened? They came before Moses and Aaron on that day. And the people said to him, we touched the dead bodies, so we're tamei, so we can't bring the Korban Pesach. Why should we be diminished? Why should we be diminished that we're unable to bring the Paschal Lamb? In its time, B'toch B'nai Israel. So that their question was, these people had a yearning, a desire to come close to Hashem, but they couldn't take part in it. Moshe said to them, Imdu v'eshma, stay here, and I'll hear ma yitzavah Hashem lechem. What will God command of you? So how did these people, what did they do to deserve? Why were they Tamei Nefesh? Rashi doesn't tell us directly here, but the Gemara in Sukkah tells us. It says, those people, who were they? Oskim b'meit mitzvah. They were doing a mitzvah, meaning to say, they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They weren't committing a sin. They were engaged in. There was a dead body that was unaccounted for, and they had to go and make sure it was buried. Or metapel b'meis. And now what happened was the seventh day of their purification was the eve of Pesach. So therefore they couldn't bring the Pesach on that day. But the next day they were able to do it. So there's a question, who are these people? Were they people carrying the bones of Joseph? But it doesn't really matter. That's almost not even the point. They were engaged in dealing with a dead body. So they said, we can't partake in the Pesach. So therefore, they came to Moshe, and Moshe did. This is one of the 3 times that Moshe didn't know the halacha on his own. He had to go to God, right? And he said, I'll go ask God. And one of the commentaries explains that it's because Moshe Rabbeinu, why didn't Hashem teach us from the beginning? Because he wanted the people who had such a strong yearning for the mitzvah to get the merit of having it taught through them. Okay, so then the people came. So they came and Moshe asked God, and God said to Moshe, saying, Daber b'nei Israel Emor, say to the children of Israel as follows: Ish, hold on. Every man asher ki yeh tamei nefesh, who will become defiled by touching a dead body, or b'derach rechoka, or will be on a faraway journey. Lachem o adorosechem, for you or for future generations. V'asa Pesach Hashem. And this person, now really the words asa means he did, but here it can't mean he did it because he didn't do the Pesach, meaning the Pesach was done, or he wants to do the Pesach. So what should happen? He missed the Korban Pesach. So before we get into what the solution is, what does it mean he's in a derech rechoka? So here Rashi comments on the fact that the Torah has a distant place. Torah has a dot above the word distant. There's a dot above it. And so Rashi says, it doesn't mean he was far away. It just means, the dot means he doesn't have to be very far away. He doesn't have to be in like Cambodia when the Pascal happened. It could have mean he was chutz la'skufata azara. He was outside of the frame of the courtyard. Alternatively, the Talmud in Pesachim states maybe he was from Modiim and outside, meaning to say he was not that far away, like a day's journey, but he still wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able to be there. He wasn't able to be part of the Pesach. So what happened? So what they should do for him is, and 1 month later, B'chodesh Sheni b'arba'asar yom bein arbayim ya'asu oso. 1 month later, he should do it. Amotzos u'marim yochluhu. He should bring it with matzos and maror. And the Gemara, the Pesachim explains. It's interesting that this concept where we know that from the Korach Seder that Hillel would take the matzah and maror and eat them together, and it says in the Haggadah, Amatzos Marim Yochlu, this is the source for it, not the original Paschal offering, but this second one. This second commandment is the source for Hillel, the way Hillel did it. And it says, well, Yashir Abok, you should not leave it over till morning, the bones you should not break, like all of the laws of the Pesach Yatsu Oto. And then it says, well, Ish Asher Hu Tahor, but if you're Tahor, then you're going to have a sin. Okay, so hold on 1 second. Excuse me. I know you have a question there, but okay, fine, hold on. So the question is, so what's the point in doing Pesach Sheni today? What's the point in eating matzah on Pesach Sheni today, which is a strong custom to do? Like, why do we, what is the holiday symbolize for us today? I mean, today we don't have a Paschal lamb, so none of us missed it. So there's no point to it, right? No, of course there is a point to it, or else it wouldn't be a strong custom. So Sam and Thera Swirsky were so generous. They mailed me this book, this beautiful, beautiful book by the Lubavitcher Rebbe called Letters for Life, Guidance for Emotional Wellness from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And by this very great, this person did great research. His name is Levi Shmotkin. And what Levi Shmotkin did is he went through thousands of letters that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote to different people. And I couldn't help my eye was attracted to one of the letters that he wrote. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. My eye was caught by one of these hold on 1 second. Was caught by one of the letters that the Rebbe wrote, and I'll read it to you, and that could help us understand what the big attraction of Pesach Sheni is for us today. So this is a 1951 letter that the Rebbe wrote, the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote, and it was addressed to a woman who had met the Rebbe for a private audience a few days earlier. And basically, the idea in it was that a person should never despair of themselves. A person shouldn't say, "Oh, I'm so behind other people. I have no chance. I'm way behind other people." So this is what the Rebbe said to them. Said to this woman, the Rebbe says, "I was pleased with the opportunity to exchange a few words with you, as you connected your visit with the day of Pesach Sheni. This woman came to visit the Rebbe on Pesach Sheni." I know it's so radical and creative that the Rebbe was meeting with women. Most of these Rebbes would never. But the Lubavitch Rebbe met with women, and he said the following. He says, "We connected your visit with the day of Pesach Sheni, which we observed on the day before yesterday." So she came to visit him on Pesach Sheni. And he writes, "I want to make it the subject of this letter." So one of the significant lessons of Pesach Sheni, so what are we celebrating, is never to despair, even when one has not attained the spiritual heights of others. These people were shut out from the opportunity to engage in the Pesach Sheni, were the opportunity to engage in the Korban Pesach, in the Paschal Lamb, and they were despairing of it. They were saying, "Why should we miss out? What did we do wrong? We didn't do anything. We're doing a mitzvah, and because of that we missed it." And they felt behind. They felt they were missing this opportunity. But the Pesach Sheni teaches us, Hashem said, you have another chance. Do it 1 month later. Pesach Sheni gave them all another chance. And so he says, that's why all the people are celebrating Passover at its proper time. And one finds himself b'derech rechoka, far away, or otherwise unfit to enter the sanctuary. A person, for some reason, is far away or unfit to enter the sanctuary. He is told, do not despair. Begin your way towards the sanctuary. Come closer and closer. For you have a special chance and opportunity to celebrate the second Passover if you try hard enough. So that's the concept of Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is the holiday that tells us that if you think you're too far away, if you think everybody else is ahead of you, if you think, I can't catch up, I missed out on so many spiritual opportunities, Pesach Sheni is the holiday that tells us, don't despair. You have a chance. You always have it's the holiday of second chances, that we have a second chance in our relationship, in our spiritual relationship. So this is the concept of Pesach Sheni, the very powerful, powerful idea. And that's what the Rebbe highlighted in his letter, in his 1951 letter for this to this woman, as a way of trying to give her spiritual encouragement. So anyway, this is the all that is the introduction to the first part of what I wanted to talk about with everybody today, the powerful idea of why this Thursday night we'll be eating matzah at the yeshiva. Okay, let me just pause for a second if anybody has a question. Okay, I see nobody has any questions. Okay, so in that context, let us move on to the parsha of this week, which is Parshas Emor. Let me just first give a summary of Parshas Emor, and then I want to talk about a little bit about the concept of the Kohen, just a little bit about the spiritual purity laws of the Kohen. So the first, let me just give everybody a little bit of a summary of the portion. That Parshas Emor begins with the laws of the Kohen, who the Kohen is allowed to become. Unlike a regular Jew, there's no prohibition on a regular Jew becoming ritually impure. If a regular Jew goes and touches a dead body, they're not doing a sin. They do become ritually impure, but that doesn't mean they've committed a sin. But if a Kohen does it, unless it's for one of his 7 relatives, he has committed a sin. He's not allowed to do that. So the Torah starts by this portion starts by teaching us the special laws of the Kohen, and then after it teaches us the special laws relating to the Kohen, then it teaches us about the laws of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. And then after it teaches us about the laws of the high priest, it teaches us about the laws of animals that are worthy to be slaughtered in the as an offering on the altar, and then after it teaches us that, it goes into uh, um, the it goes into the it goes into the laws of the festivals. It goes through all the shalosh regalim, the three festivals. And after it does that, it goes into the law of making the olive oil and lighting the menorah and setting up the candles in the temple. And after it does that, it goes to the law of the lechem hapanim, the loaves of bread, which is something that we discussed a lot in our tractate Menachos. And then after we do that, the Torah goes to the discussion of the Yisraelite, the Israelite who goes out, who's the son of a Jewish woman but an Egyptian man, who goes out and he causes problems in the camp and he curses God, and they brought him to Moshe and they put him in the holding cell, and Moshe went and asked God, and they killed him. And then it just ends with some civil laws about how much you have to pay, and that is the laws of our parsha. So going back to the first aliyah, which I want to discuss a little with everybody, the first aliyah, we'll talk about some Hasidic concepts of it, but before we go into it, some of the highlights that are here are, what is the spiritual idea behind the opening words? That the theme of the opening verses, Hashem said to Moshe, Emor al Kohanim b'nei Aaron, and then it says the whole portion is Emor, the Amarta. It's about speaking and saying. So what is going on with that? And then what is the concept that the Kohen who touches the dead body becomes ritually impure? And then what is the concept of the Kohen Gadol? So these are three general ideas that, first of all, Emor V'Amarta talks about how the Kohen has to be, his words must come from inside of him. Emor V'Amarta, that the words must be consistent with his being, that this cannot be an idea that's alien to him. That when the Kohen speaks, it has to be with an expression of Emor V'Amarta. It's something that comes flowing up from inside of him. And what's the spiritual concept of the Kohen? Stanley asked this question before. Why specifically is the Kohen specifically commanded not to touch a dead body? So one of the ideas from here is, one of the ideas of the Hasidic idea is that the Kohen represents education. He's the educator. His main primary responsibility was to educate the people. And that person needs to be alive. That person can't be that can't be dead. The tradition needs to be alive. It needs to have energy. And if he's too associated with the dead, just the opposite. He doesn't have the energy. So that's the concept. And what about the Kohen Gadol? The Kohen Gadol is not even allowed to go to a funeral. The Kohen Gadol is above everything else. He is so disconnected from the physical limitations of the world that he's not even ever able to become ritually impure. He can't even go to his own parents, Levaya, can't even go to his own spouse or his own children. Rahman, what's in all these cases? Because the Kohen Gadol is disconnected from everybody. And so he's on a much higher spiritual level. So let us go to the way some of the commentaries discuss this opening verse, Emor al Kohanim. God says to Moshe, say to the Kohanim, the children of Aaron, and say to them, that for a soul you're not allowed to become tameh. So I want to share some ideas here, but first I always like to start with Rabbi Eli Melech of Azhensk, and this is a citation of Rabbi Eli Melech from the Yismach Yisrael. So Rashi says, what do we learn from the idea? It says, Emor v'amarta. Rashi says, Lahazir gedolim ala katanim, that the adults were warned about the minors, meaning to say that an adult is not permitted to allow a minor to become ritually impure if the minor is a Kohen. And normally speaking, there's no prohibition. You're not obligated to separate a minor from doing a transgression, because a minor is not commanded in mitzvot until they reach the age of bar mitzvah. But when it comes to a minor Kohen, you're commanded that he's not allowed to come in contact with the dead, even a baby Kohen. So if let's say there's a baby who's in, let's say, a synagogue's nursery, 1 year old, and the synagogue decides to have a funeral in the synagogue, which many synagogues do. They have to make sure that that day, while the body is in the sanctuary, they tell the little baby boy Kohanim to leave the building. So that's what has to take place. So what does Rabbi Melch say about this? And more Marta, the Hazir. So he says, but he takes his phrase to warn the adults, Lahazir Gedolim al Katanim, to warn the Gedolim about the Katanim, which I had translated the way most people understand Rashi as that the adults have to be warned not to allow the minors to become ritually impure. That's Rabbi Melech. No, it's something else. The Gedolim here doesn't mean the adults. What's a Gadol? Gadol is the tzaddikim. We warn the tzaddikim about the Ketanim. What's the Ketanim? Katan means small. To warn the tzaddikim about the small things, about the small sins. Meaning to say, that the tzaddik has to be especially careful about the minor sins. Why? Because, and this is the words of Rabbi Melech, quoting the Gemara, that if you have a silk white garment, even a little bit of a stain, a very, very minor stain, but can you imagine if you have a bridal dress and you have a little stain on it? Of course, it's going to ruin the whole dress. It's just a little stain. If I had that stain on, like my garments, nobody would even care. Nobody would notice. But if you have a beautiful bridal dress or a beautiful white garment and you have a stain on it, of course, it's going to be noticeable. And so therefore, a person who is merited to have, is a very righteous man, therefore he's going to see his mistakes even when they're very, very small. And that's what the Rabbi Melch does with this Rashi. To warn the Gedolim, to warn the great people about even minor mistakes, because the greater you are, the more your minor mistakes are going to be visible. The Tiferes Shlomo, the Radomsker Rebbe, he was a student of Rabbi Melch. He says that he also learned this idea is connected to the tzaddik, to the concept of a great person. And he says, we learned this out from the Baal Shem Tov. He says, whoever is connected to a tzaddik, they have this concept that if you're connected to a righteous person, that basically that you have some spiritual protection. And Hashem will bless those hakatanim imagedolim. The concept is that if you're connected to a tzaddik, that you're going to be able to come under their shadow of their protection. And so the Tiferes Shlomo says, when the minors are connected to, when the regular people like me and most people in the world are connected to the giants, then they're going to get included in the blessing. And even if the minor one is filled with sins, nevertheless, they're going to merit by being connected to the tzaddik to take some reward from his holy work. And this is what it means, lahazir gedolim al katanim, to encourage the tzaddikim that they should bring up the katanim with them. This is now you might say, okay, how does this relate to me? Very, very few tzaddikim in the world. I mean, world today. I mean, you could spend your whole life looking for a tzaddik. You can spend your whole life looking for a tzaddik and not find it. So what's this concept of a tzaddik? How does it help us today? So the idea is that our lives are so small and hard to relate to, but if we want to find meaning in our life, we should attach ourselves to something much greater than us. That's the concept there, to attach ourselves to something much greater than us. Attach ourselves to a cause, to a community, to an institution, to a value system that's much greater than us. And if we do that, then we'll find the meaning. On our own, we're not able to do anything. But when we are attached to it, then we're going to have meaning and protection. That's the concept here. Okay, so now another concept about this powerful phrase, Emor Ela Kohanim B'nei Aaron, that you should warn the Gedolim about the Ketanim, comes from the Parachas Altanitza, and he says the Gedolim are the people who stand at the head of the community, and they're being warned that they should humble themselves, that they shouldn't think that they're better than everybody else. So Tir Gedolim Ala Ketanim, that they're being warned to humble themselves. So these are just three ideas within this phrase of Hazir Al Gedolim Al Ketanim. Another way to understand it is that it states, this comes from Reb Simcha Bunim of Peshischa. He cites the Midrash Rabbah. It says, what does it mean, say to the Kohanim and Aaron, Melamed Sherahu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe Dor V'Shovtav, Dor Umanigav. Meaning to say, God showed Moshe at that time, says the Midrash, the future generations, with all their judges and all their leaders. Meaning to say, God showed Moshe, year 2026, Donald Trump will be the president. And Justice, whatever, was going to be the Supreme Court Justice. God showed Moshe all the way down through time. So basically, what does that mean? He showed him each generation and its leaders. That he said the worse the generation, the greater the leader is needed. So what does this mean? Why do you have to show Moshe the generation together with its leaders? Why do you have to show the generation together with its parnes? Those are the leaders. Why couldn't he just show the leaders? Why do you have to show each generation? So Rabbi Simcha Bunim Peshischa was a blind man, and so he said, and so he writes like this. He says that if Moshe had just seen the blind Bunim, that's how Rabbi Simcha Bunim used to tell the story. If Moshe Rabbeinu had just seen blind Bunim and he saw that he was like a rabbi in a town, he would be so shocked. He would say, "How's it possible? How is it possible that you have such Bunim, the blind man? So how is it possible that you have this guy here?" But then he would see the generation. He says, "Oh, now I understand. A generation like this needs this type of leader." So each community is entitled to its own rabbi. Each community is entitled to its own leader, and that's the concept. Okay, so that's on the first. That's in the first verse of Emor V'Amarta. That the Hasidic interpretation of it is to look at it as speaking to the nature of leadership, to the responsibilities of the Kohen, and to also not only for that generation but also for future generations. Then one of the things, actually, I was reading this pasuk this morning when I was reading the Torah, and I was almost shocked. I got afraid when I was reading the Torah this morning, because it says in the pasuk. I mean, I hadn't prepared properly, so otherwise I wouldn't have been afraid. But it says that the Kohen is not allowed to become tamei, and I was reading it. He's only allowed to become tamei to the l'sheiro, usually means his wife, l'imo aviv, to his mother and to his father, l'imo aviv, v'livno b'to achiv, to his mother and to his father, and to his son, his daughter, and his brother. But the question is, normally in the Torah, the father comes before the mother. And here it says, L'imo aviv, to his mother and to his father. So I got scared. I was thinking, oh no, did I copy the Torah wrong? Because it happened to be from a Torah that I wrote. And I was thinking, did I copy the Torah wrong? Did I write it wrong? But it wasn't. I wrote it right. So what's the reason why the mother comes before the father? This is something that the commentaries take up. So the Rav Yaakov Gesundheit, anybody ever hear of Rabbi Yaakov Gesundheit? Rabbi Yaakov Gesundheit was the head of was the Av Bezdin in Warsaw, Rabbi Yaakov Gesundheit was Av Bezdin in Warsaw. He was the head of the court in Warsaw, a great Torah scholar. And he says, why is the mother here mentioned before the father? Because, so the reason why the, so even Ezra says, the reason is because saying you could go to the funeral of your mother and your father if you're a Kohen. So he says it's mentioned mother first because usually the father is going to live longer. In those days, the mothers typically, I guess in those days the mothers died earlier. They died during childbirth. Nowadays, I think women live longer than men. But in those days, the father lived longer, so that's why it says you go to the mother first. But that's Ibn Ezra. But there's a problem for this because later on it says by the Kohen Gadol it says Aviv Limo. It says for his father and his mother he cannot become tamei. So by the high priest it puts the father first, but by the regular Kohen it puts the mother first. So how do we understand this? So here's a beautiful idea. He says, I'll tell you what he says. It's a powerful idea, and this it's going to take us back full circle to the book from the Lubavitch Rebbe that we started with. So he says as follows: he says, by the Kohen Gadol, first of all, by the high priest, it's almost impossible that the mother will die before the father. Why? Why by the high priest will the mother not die before the father? Because generally speaking, the Kohen Gadol got his job only when his father died, because he took the place of his father. And it's because it says if everybody's equal, the Kohen Gadol's son takes his place. And so therefore, as long as his father was alive, he's not the Kohen Gadol. And if his mother died before that, he needs to become Tameh like a regular Kohen. It's only if the father dies, then only at that point, once the father dies, does he become Kohen Gadol. And his first day as Kohen Gadol, he's not allowed to go to the funeral because he's the new Kohen Gadol. But the mother would still be alive. Or else she would have died before he became Kohen Gadol. And therefore, it says the Gemara in Makos 11 says, therefore, the mothers of the Kohanim Gadolim, what would they do? Their job. What was the job of the mother of the Kohen Gadol? Her job was to bring food to those who killed accidentally, and they ran to the city of refuge because they were released from the city of refuge only when the Kohen Gadol died. So the mother didn't want these prisoners or these refugees, she didn't want them to pray for her son to die. So what did she do? She would bring food for them, for the prisoners, to kind of bribe them not to pray that their father died. So why was only the mother going and not the father going? She was doing this so they would not pray that her son died. Why was only the mother going and not the father? So it's because most of the time the Kohen Gadol was basically took over for the father. So the Kohen Gadol had no father. His father had died. So the mother was going to bring it. But I want to say that what was the job of the Kohen Gadol's mother? Why was she doing this? So we go back to what the Rebbe said at the beginning. The Rebbe said at this book that Sam and Thera gave me, the Rebbe, it says here right at the very beginning, that the Rebbe's basic idea was that here we have the mother of the Kohen Gadol. She's so worried about her son because everybody's going to be davening that her son will die. There's all so much pressure on him. It was a thankless job, and they didn't live very long. So here he is, this Kohen Gadol in a very high risk position. So what was her job to do? So her job was to turn one's mind. The Rebbe said to turn one's mind and heart towards others. That was how the Rebbe said that if you're in a moment of distress, what you should do is turn to help others. And this is a letter that he wrote. He writes to a person, you must get away from yourself. Begin to think of others. It's time to begin an active participation in society, to give and to give generously. The opportunities are many and the need is great. So here we have the Kohen Gadol's mother. What was she doing? She's living in distress. She took upon herself, when her son became anointed to basically the highest position in the land. The highest position is the Kohen Gadol, or maybe the king, but one of the two highest positions. What did she take upon herself? The responsibility to give to others. To give, and who was she giving to? the people who had nothing, the people who were unable to leave the city. She was going to feed the prisons, like she cooked the lunch every day for the prisoners. So this is the greatness of why it says to the mother and to the father. The mother was the only one there for the Kohen Gadol. So the father is already got the father and the mother because the mother is the only one left. But the mother, what was she doing? She wasn't sitting at home feeling sorry for herself. She was going out and giving to others. And that's basically the example for the Kohen Gadol. If you want to be the Kohen Gadol, you have to come from a place where your mother understands that the concept is that the more we give, the healthier we are. The more we give, we make a greater society for everybody. Let me stop here and take some questions.
Yeah,